out of the sunbeam right there so I can see who's all out here. Thank you for being here. Delight to be back. I haven't been this cold in 3 weeks. And it's good to be back in a place that has a period of time during the course of a year that kills all the bugs, the germs, gets us started all over again. I'm here primarily to hear your questions and comments. And so I think the best process would be to get to those cards. And I assume from the many town halls that I've done that basically I'll answer all the questions and make all the comments that I would have made anyway by going through the questions. So Jay, it's okay if I call you Jay?
Absolutely.
All right. I'm moving 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on here.
All right. So from body page.
Do we need this? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we need it.
Okay, we'll use that.
All right, you use it. Oh yeah. Bonnie from Ann Arbor. What are your plans for reducing the cost of prescription drugs? My medication costs $6,000 a month. That's excessive. This is one area that the ACA did not seem to cover. That's Bonnie from Ann Arbor.
Yeah, in fact, the ACA caused the exorbitant increases in prescription drug costs. And that's been the challenge when we've talked with people who have come and said, I used to pay $100, now I end up paying $500 for my coverage. And the hundreds of cards and calls that have come in to our office make that very clear. Young people, older people alike. I think the President in his State of the Union address the other night made it very clear that we're going after the issue of our drugs and development of our drugs to make sure that, number one, we give approval more quickly, we get it out into the field to be useful to people, and in the process develop the competition. In doing that, that gives the opportunity for prices to go down, which generally takes place in any commodity when you have competition that goes on between resource givers. And so that's the approach that will be taken. I think there can also be done some things when you get into the government supplied issues of having negotiated price ranges that go on. But the good free market approach of competition is generally the best way to handle it.
All right, Congressman from Michael in Chelsea. As a Vietnam veteran, I'm concerned that we are already spending way too much on military. Now the President wants to increase spending even more. What is your position on this?
I think we need to increase spending on military for the appropriate things. Not for wasted things, not to give contractors that will abuse their right and their opportunity to compete for government contracts for military purposes, but to make sure that we are supplying our warfighters with the appropriate equipment to meet the needs that we expect. Remember, the number one responsibility that this government has, and that I have when I take the oath of office, is to defend and protect this nation against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Right now, we are truly a hollowed out military. I had recently the opportunity to fly on a C-130 that was 60 years old. I stopped at a military base that had over half of their F-18, F-15, F-16 fighter planes grounded for lack of parts, and some of them were being scavenged off those planes and put on other planes. We have military families that have seen nothing to speak of an increase in the pay and care for the families. That has to change. We are a nation that can be free and can be compassionate for the rest of the world as long as we're a nation that is strong. And to put our military, and I just recently had an opportunity to greet a number of Michigan troops over in Afghanistan, fully committed to the work of doing what's necessary to push back terrorists, to protect our nation, but also to protect freedom-loving people. And we have to have the capability to do that. We have, through sequestration and other things, diminished the abilities of our troops, even though they're the best in the world.
Congressman from Elizabeth and North Adams, will you support funding for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting?
I think I have supported it. The question is, at what level? And we look forward to seeing the President's budget, which will be coming up shortly, and we look forward to seeing what's coming up in the appropriations process. But again, we have communications tools in the form of broadcasting, radio, TV, now the internet, which is an amazing means of getting information out as well. And we need to make sure that number one priorities are cared for. And that includes social safety net, that includes the military, that includes those things of infrastructure that we have that are important to all of us. Public broadcasting has been carried on to some degree by donations of people who appreciate it and use it. That's how it ought to be.
No.
Okay. For
Next question.
Betty.
all right, next question.
Hey, we're doing well so far.
From Bonnie Dundee. Why can't we negotiate an agreement whereby we import safe, low-cost pharmaceuticals from Canada?
Well, I think we could negotiate agreement on that, and that's something we ought to be considering. But I think the best push comes in making sure that we have regulatory issues in place so that our drug companies, which are fraught with problems that Canada doesn't have. Stop and think about it. Canadian drug companies, major research and development is done by who? The United States. The majority of research for their drugs is done here in the United States. Secondly, do they pay liability costs and malpractice? They don't have that cost. They're government entities. We have non-government entities here, drug companies that are doing the research, pay for the liability costs, the malpractice, the frivolous lawsuits, and the additional regulatory costs that go from excessive regulation that the President talked about the other night. That makes it difficult to get drugs that impact in positive ways people to the marketplace because of FDA and the extended process. Now, we certainly need a process, but we also need to make sure that people who are dying right now and other people are using drugs in other countries that come from our corporations and are successfully using them and lives are being spared, that those same issues can be dealt with here in this country as well.
Congressman from Tanya in Dexter, Michigan, how can we assure our Michigan farmers and undocumented children in our own public schools that the immigration policy of deporting all illegals won't have a negative impact on our economy and culture in a way of life in Michigan?
There is no policy of deporting all illegals. There is no policy of deporting all illegals. And that's something we need to accept right now. There is no deportation policy for all illegals. They are going after illegals who have committed crimes. Beyond that, if you've been to my town hall meetings, as I look out and I see faces here, I know a number of you, a good number, have been to town hall meetings where I've discussed my support for making an H program, an immigration program that works better than it does now, that allows our farmers, our contractors, our hospitality industry, and even some of our high-tech areas to have documented legal alien workforce to cover jobs that aren't being covered by our own Americans, either being unprepared for the job or unwilling to do the job. We need that. In the agricultural industry of the 7th District of Michigan, we have a great benefit of having documented alien workforce that do various things in our ag economy that are necessary. We can do some significant tweaking to make sure that these same people can be used in multiple places around the nation with the harvest process that goes on throughout the year. We can do the same with the construction, the hospitality industry. where it's appropriate. And I think that has to be worked on. I've been very public in my statements about the fact that this is a nation that it should still encourage people who love the American idea, want to participate in the process, come to this country, sign the guest book, abide by our laws, and be impacted positively as well as impact positively. So we'll continue working on that. I was encouraged with the statements of the President in his speech the other night in speaking for true and strong immigration reform to give opportunity for people who love America to be here just like us.
Congressman, we have several questions regarding Russia, and the theme from Tony and Carol and others, Carol from Brooklyn, Tony from Tecumseh, some other folks, is do you support an appointment of an independent counsel to get all the facts about Russia's involvement in our democracy?
Hear, hear.
Okay, next question.
It's not funny. It's not funny at all.
I will support whatever is necessary to carry out the law. Right now we have the proper system working in place.
No, we don't.
You're going to have to allow me to answer the question. You're going to have to allow me to answer the question. I think we have the appropriate functions working right now. We have two bipartisan committees that are given that responsibility, the select committees on intelligence, who are meeting in both the House and Senate, looking at the background. We have the Justice Department that started before even the new Attorney General was put in place, looking at the relationship of Russia to the campaign and the outcome of the elections. And ultimately, they concluded, and this was before Donald Trump was sworn in even, they concluded that there was no indication that an impact from Russia was had upon the election outcomes. And so those processes are taking place right now. If there is a fact that shows that we need some select committee, then I will support that. But until the processes that America has put in place that have served us well are carried out, I can't suggest anything beyond that.
All right, Congressman.
This is the American way. I mean, we agree and we disagree. So,
Juanita from Adrian says, a lot has been made recently about fake news, and the press should, quote, sit down and shut up. Do you support the First Amendment when it comes to this issue?
I support the First Amendment.
Okay. Sandra George from Jonesville asked, what are you doing to end civil asset forfeiture? No one should lose property if not convicted of a crime. That's from Jonesville, Michigan.
Yeah, that's an important issue. And as you know, I sponsored that legislation in the House, and Rand Paul sponsored it in the Senate. We were unsuccessful in getting it through with the last administration. We are hopeful we can persuade President Trump, who has taken, I think, the wrong position on this. I think because he hasn't been educated on it yet, and that's my responsibility and Rand Paul's responsibility to educate. We believe law enforcement ought to have significant tools to go after terrorist action, money laundering, drug trade, human trafficking, and a lot of that is involved with being able to have criminal asset forfeiture laws in place, which have worked very well, and civil asset forfeiture as well. But civil asset forfeiture, my concern is that citizens who have not been adjudicated to even be guilty or been charged, have had their cars, their resources, their money bags of grocers going to their bank to deposit $10,000 of receipts because their insurance company said we won't cover you beyond $10,000 of receipts. So the wise grocer says, I take that to the bank each day. Well, that develops a pattern, doesn't it? And so that gives an opportunity. Well, it gives more than an opportunity. It gives a requirement for law enforcement to look into that and ultimately to seize. if there's an indication this could be something that might be part of the legal process. Well, there are ways we can address that, and my bill and Rand Paul's bill addresses it. It gives opportunity for the tool to be used, but the citizen to not have to go through thousands and thousands of dollars and, in certain cases, years of the process to get their assets back. And so we'll continue to push that, and like I said, I am confident that once we're able to explain this to President Trump and his administration, and maybe do a few tweaks with it, we can get that thing moving again. Rand Paul and I just talked about it 2 weeks ago.
Congressman, from our friend Mr. Glide here in Hilsdale to Dennis in Pittsburgh, with our country's problem with both illegal and legal immigration, I was wondering where you stood on Senator Cotton's bill, it looks like RAISE Act and the E-Verify bill.
I'm not informed heavily on Cotton's bill in specifics, so I don't know if you want to give me more specifics on it.
I didn't actually bring that
E-Verify.
question.
You were E-Verify, right?
Well,
I support E-Verify as long as the government is responsible for it, its costs, and bears responsibility if they make mistakes in the process.
we can't do that if we don't have immigration reform along with it.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be immigration reform, whether it's the H-2 programs